Excellent. So I hope great. So we are live. Hello, everyone. Very good evening to all of you. And in today's session, we are going to be addressing this topic on how do we maximize our preparation now that we are working from home. So a lot of you might have gone through this thing of in the office, and suddenly you have started working from home, as would be the case with many of you. So now what has happened is your routine has changed. In case you are trying to adjust to this new routine, figuring out how do I take the GMAT in the next 2 to 3 months when I'm working from home, and how to maximize my time in preparation while I'm working from home. That's really the intent of today's session, right? So I'm going to be giving you some things which hopefully will help you utilize the next 2 to 3 months better. So before we get there, just a couple of things so that we are all on the same page. I would love if you put your whatever you want to chat, you can put it on the chat window. I also have Abhijit from GMAT Club who would be helping me on this. And just one thing that I wanted to let you guys know that we are aspiring to get a lot of new, fresh content to you guys from GMAT Club, from Trackable. So my request is go ahead and hit the subscribe button on the GMAT Club, YouTube channel, right? So that you get updates on such webinars, right? So please use the chat window. I'm pretty sure you have a lot of questions with you. So I would request if you could keep the Q&A till the end. So if you can keep your questions for the Q&A session, I will make sure that I will answer all your queries in the end. In case there are any technical issues, I have a couple of backups. I have a Wi-Fi, I have a backup Wi-Fi, I have a third backup and so on. But please bear with me. Abhijit and I will coordinate. So in case there is a lag, I'll come back in maybe a minute or two. And lastly, just one advice that I have for you to maximize our session. Let us also practice some mindfulness. So I would request you to just be focused on what I'm going to say for the next 30-40 minutes. And this will add a tremendous value. So I'm talking about the difference between, let's say, 3.5 months of preparation versus, let's say, 2.5 months of preparation, right? So this is one of those lever effects where hopefully you will see a lot of benefits. A quick word about myself. My name is Arun. That's my email. I'm the founder of Trackable. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. That is my LinkedIn. You can just go on LinkedIn and search for Arun, and you can connect. One advantage is if you connect me on LinkedIn, you also get access to everyone else in my network. So I have a very rich network of people who are alums at these schools, current students at these schools, many of my past students. And, if you know how LinkedIn works, you actually end up seeing them as your second level. So when you want to connect with people who are in your second level, LinkedIn will allow you to do so. But if they are not, then you have to go in for the paid options, right? So that's an advantage of connecting on LinkedIn. And please let me know if there is anything. That's my contact details. Just to give you a sense of what we're going to do is I'm going to start off with some free resources. I wanted to share certain things that would help in your GMAT preparation. So I want to make sure I give you all of that. I'm going to briefly talk about what changes now that we are preparing for GMAT from home, right? I'll be following this with a top 10 kind of guideline, like a top 10 tips, top 10 rules kind of thing. And finally, we will make sure that the last 15 minutes or so I keep for Q&A. So let's kind of see if we are able to kind of do all of that. So I hope you are able to see my screen clearly. So I'm just a couple of our students who in the last few months have scored well on the GMAT. In fact, we had a Insta Live session with Vipin Bansal last weekend. Vipin is joining the Johnson School of Business. We also put in a YouTube video of Guru Simran, who got through Tepper this year. He has a 740 on the GMAT. So all of these people have actually come, shared their stories with us. So here are some free resources. So Abhijit, if you could just share the link. So we actually have entire course for our students called How to Study for the GMAT, right? So this is a course where I have put in a bunch of videos where I marry productivity techniques, management techniques with certain, how to study for the GMAT. So it's actually a very unique course. And for people attending the webinar, we are giving this, access for free. So Abhijit, if you could share that link. One more thing I wanted to tell was, apart from the GMAT Club YouTube channel, please also subscribe to the Trackable channel. So if you see, we shared recently about the interim GMAT exam, what we feel. We have also shared some success stories, whether you should do an MBA. So a lot of content, not just on GMAT, but also on MBA, correct? There are also resources on the Crackable website. You can just go to crackable.com and you can access the free resources directly from there. We also have our blog where we are, going to be posting updates about GMAT. So make sure you remain subscribed to that. So I will wait for Abhijit to post all of these links. So let's get started with the topic that we have. And the first thing that I would like you to think is, how many of you are actually preparing from home, right? So how many of you are, studying for this exam from home? If you are doing so in the last couple of weeks, you might have realized that there is just, so much. I'll just check with Abhijit if he has the links. Abhijit, can you just post on the chat? Are you able to listen to me? Because I don't see anyone commenting on the chat window also. So I just wanted to check on that. Okay, so I'm anyways going to continue because I think there is a slight lag. So, in terms of if you're preparing for GMAT from home, as you might have known in the last couple of days, there is some information about this. So GMAT has actually started allowing you to take the GMAT from home. I will give you the TLDR version, okay? I will give you the synopsis of it. I think the synopsis is it has a lot of advantages. It has a lot of positives. I think the only negative that we see so far has been the use of the online scratchpad. So I have also personally taken it up with GMAT. I think a lot of students have given very strong feedback to GMAC, and we are hoping that sooner than later they are able to kind of come around and they are able to give us a solution similar to GRE, where what happens is the scratch pad that you have, they have certain specifications, and as long as you meet those specifications, you can keep a pen and a paper to use your calculation. And the reason I'm saying that is, and this is something that I shared with my students a short while ago, which is there are two types of thinking. Okay, what is called as type 1 thinking and type 2 thinking. See, type 2 thinking is the thinking that we use when we brainstorm, when we think very deeply about a matter. But type 1 thinking is the kind of quick responses that we make when we are presented with data. For example, if I were to give you a simple question, okay, a simple question, if I were to buy a bat and a ball for $1.10, the bat costs $1 more than the ball. I will repeat what I said. A bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. What is the cost of the ball? Now, if you are normal, right, and if you are trying to do this mentally, what will happen is if you don't use a paper and a pen, you will end up saying that the answer is 10 cents. Correct? That's what intuitively comes to you. But the answer is not 10 cents. The answer is the bat costs $1.05 and the ball costs 5 cents. Now let's put both the data together. So the bat costs $1.05, ball costs 5 cents, both put together cost $1.10, and the bat costs $1 more than 5 cents, right? It's $1.05. So, both the equations are met. Now, the reason I'm giving this example to you is because this is exactly the way your brain is going to work on the GMAT. Right, our brain, and a lot of what I teach in Crack Verbal, as a tutor for the last 20 plus years, is our brain works in a particular way. So, according to me, that's the biggest disadvantage that you have by choosing the GMAT interim solution. Now, coming to the prep itself, right? So let's assume that you are saying, okay, Arun, maybe I will wait for the test centers to open up in June, July, right? So April, May, June, let's say that 3 months I'm preparing for the GMAT, and July, August, when the test centers open, maybe at that point I want to take the test. But in any case, you're going to be preparing for the GMAT at home, correct? So what are the advantages? So I think there are some huge advantages. First of all, you get to study from home, right? You have your own environment, correct? You have your convenience. You also end up saving a lot on travel time. If you look at a large city like Mumbai or Delhi or Bangalore, right, you realize that most of us were spending anywhere from, let's say, an hour to 2 hours just on commute, correct? So with studying from home, that's a huge advantage that we get, okay? But along with that, there are also some disadvantages that I've heard from students. How many of you are feeling frustrated because in your mind, you thought that you have already wasted almost a month? Think about it. The lockdown, if you think about it, started approximately a month ago, correct? So it's about 1 month that you have been locked in the house. You have not really traveled. You had all the flexibility, correct? But because you don't have a structure, because you don't have a study plan, what happens? We end up worrying about the GMAT, not studying for it. Remember what I'm saying. We worry about the GMAT. None of you who are attending this webinar today are people who are saying GMAT is not important to me, correct? But I've heard so many students come to me and say, GMAT is crucial, it's important to me, but the problem that I'm facing is that, when I start studying for the GMAT, invariably, I don't know what is happening wrong. I have the right intent in place, but somehow I'm not able to make that happen, right? So today, what I'm going to tell you, therefore, is tell you how to bring about this structure. Okay, how to bring about this structure. My request is for you to keep a paper and pen with you, right? And whatever I'm telling you now, I want you to analyze it from your own perspective, right? What does it mean for you? How is it going to make your preparation for the GMAT better, correct? Remember, there is this anecdote that if you have 10 hours to cut the tree, make sure that you're spending 1 hour sharpening the axe, correct? Because that's really what you're doing. We are sharpening the axe over here. All right, so let me start with the first tip. The first tip is around having a goal, having a study plan. Usually, my thumb rule is you need no more than 3 to 4 months to study for the GMAT. Okay, 3 to 4 months is more than enough. Anybody telling you that you need to have more time is misguiding you. Okay, you just need 3 to 4 months, correct? You need to figure out what you need to accomplish, correct? And once you have kind of created that structure, it is a lot easier for you to achieve the goal through your study plan. Now I'll tell you, there are a lot of study plans, floating around, but I will tell you a basic thing for the study plan. One crucial thing for the study plan is think of this as a journey to, let's say, you're driving, correct? And in the journey, what you're looking for is on the road, if you see, there will be milestones, correct? So if you're, let's say, driving from Mumbai to Pune, right, you will see on the way, there will be milestones which say 50 meters, 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers. So you are progressing, correct? So first of all, you need to have a 2 to 3 month study plan. If you don't have a study plan, no problem. You can always get in touch with us, and we'll figure out how to do that. But to a large extent, having a study plan, according to me, is the first thing. Please do not surround yourself with material. Correct? Do not surround yourself with material. I'm going to be talking about that very shortly, but at this point, make sure you have a study plan. What is the essential component? This study plan should have milestones. So the entire 3 months needs to be broken down into shorter milestones. What could be these milestones? Let me give you a couple of milestones. First of all, if you are preparing using the official material, then one milestone could be completing questions from the official guide. Another material could be completing material from the verbal review, correct? One more milestone, in case you have not already done so, is to take a GMAT Prep test. You can take it from mba.com. There are 2 free tests available. Try to see what are your scores. There are also paid tests. You could take those, and that will give you a sense of how you are making progress, correct? So that's the first point that I had, which is have a very clear goal study plan, 3 to 4 months. Remember what I'm saying? 3 to 4 months, not more than that. The second thing that I would like you to do is remember, for you to make GMAT studying a habit, okay, it has to be consistent at the same time. Okay, there is a lot of research on human psychology that has shed light into this about how we need to be having rituals, correct? By the way, I'm just trying to see, I didn't see much on the chat window, so I'm just assuming that the chat window is also on. So one of the things is, when you have a routine, okay, what is the meaning of a routine? The routine means something that has a fixed starting point. Now, what do I mean by a fixed starting point? Let me give you 2 examples of a starting point, correct? One starting point is exactly at 7 p.m. every day, my mobile alarm is going to go off, and I'm going to be sitting for 2 hours, and I'm going to be focusing from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. every day, come what may, to study for the GMAT. That's option number 1. Option number 2 is when you say, I will complete my work for the day, whatever office work I have, I'll complete for the day. Then, when I'm feeling a little better, I will sit and study for the GMAT. Now tell me, which of the 2 do you think will work, right? So, you have to have a starting point that is fixed. I cannot underscore this more. You can define your study or your preparation to be just 5 minutes. That's okay, correct? But make sure you have a very clear starting cue. Other thing, and kind of a corollary of the second point, is I have seen a lot of students who sit with the Ogee. So they have their laptop, they are working, they are attending Zoom calls, they are on Slack, they are emailing, they are doing all that work. But what happens is they just spend a lot of time in front of the book. There are a couple of problems with this approach. The first approach is you constantly worry. Your brain is getting used up because you're worrying. Remember, worrying also uses up precious mental energy, correct? So you are using up that mental energy, but at the same time, what's also happening is you are not getting the required ROI, correct? So my suggestion is, please study for 1 hour or 2 hours, not more than that. Just 1 or 2 hours a day is more than enough. Please trust, coming from me, I've experienced working with a lot of students. You simply cannot study for 10 hours. Anybody who has taken a full-length test, it be a diagnostic test or your actual GMAT, you know what I'm talking about. If you really, kind of use all of your brain power, 2 hours, you will be brain dead. Okay, that is how much of mental energy GMAT consumes. Correct. So make sure that you're not sitting with the Ogee and not worrying about it. Now, other question that I've had is people asking, is there a best time to study? For this, my request would be understand yourself better. When do you function the best? Correct? So there are morning people. So if you're a morning person, let's say you wake up at 5:30, correct? So here is what I want you to do is wake up at 5:30, brush, take a shower, wear your clothes, do whatever you want to do, correct? Don't start studying in your pajamas. Okay, that's a bad strategy, right? That you're sitting in your pajamas half asleep sipping your cup of coffee. Don't do that. So wake up, do that. Even if you want to do like 30 minutes of exercise, cardio or something, do that, right? But then what happens is 6:30 to 8:30, for example. So every day, what you do now that your commute time has been saved, you end up using that time to sit and study. Correct? Once you complete your prep, let's say 8:30, you put down your pen, you close your Ogee, or you shut your GMAT Club account. Please do not go back to it during the day. During the day, I want you to enjoy the rest of the day, right? Even if you have time in the evening, unless and until you really feel like it, don't go back to the books. I'll tell you why. What will happen is if you do this, you will respect the time you're allocating, right? You get what I'm saying? You'll respect the time you're allocating. If you feel that you can study anytime during the day, what is going to happen is you will start off, then you will give yourself excuses. You will say, okay, if it is not 7:30, it doesn't matter, I'll do it at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, you'll say, I'll do it post lunch. Lunch, you'll say, I'll do it in the evening. You don't do that, correct? Now, you are an evening person, you are a late night owl. What do you do in that case? In that case, here is what I would like you to do. Wake up, do your stuff. Don't worry about GMAT, okay? Don't worry about GMAT. Go to, do your office work in the evening, relax, watch TV, correct? So 6:37, you want to watch TV, catch up on the news. Maybe 10:30, okay, or whatever your time is, okay? Please switch off Netflix or Amazon or whatever else that you're binge watching. 10:30 to 12:30, 2 hours, that's all. Correct? So again, what I would request is figure out what is your circadian cycle, right? When do you work best? For example, what I have found out about myself is my peak zones are around 10 in the morning, 10:30 in the morning, and around 4:35 in the evening, right? It's weird, okay? But I'm really a middle of the day guy. So even if you have a schedule in the middle of the day, that's okay. If you're able to kind of juggle it along with your work, wonderful. The next tip that I have is please understand that your biggest source of distraction is right here in front of you. That's the internet. I've had so many students tell me that Arun, my biggest source of distraction is the internet. So what happens is most of our prep material is online, correct? So let me give you a classic scenario and tell me if it has happened to you. We opened GMAT Club with the most sincerest of intentions, correct? We feel we will focus, we will read up threads, we have 5 or 6 questions, we will solve all of those. What happens? You start solving a particular question. By the 3rd or 4th post, you realize that you've got the answer. But then you don't stop there. You will see a related thread. Okay, and the related thread could have, let's say, a debrief of a student scoring 770, right? So you will say something like, how I scored 770 in 2 days. Then what happens? Suddenly, we end up getting defocused, and what we do, we go and we start reading that thread. Now, while we are reading that thread, he suddenly says, oh, by the way, I used the Socrates principle for data sufficiency. Correct? The next thing that you know, you're on Google trying to search for Socrates, or you're going to a particular thread trying to download some material, some PDF. Correct? Please understand that this kind of behavior is going to be detrimental to your prep. Correct? First thing you need to do is have the intention. Correct? So there are a couple of apps that you can install. Stay focused, focus me, be it a Mac or a Windows machine, you should find something that is going to help you stay focused. But I want you to be conscious that internet is going to be a big deterrent. In fact, if you ask me, since GMAT, in 2005, if you had been studying for the GMAT, there was hardly any online material. There was no GMAT Club. There was no, online MBA.com, giving you all these resources. There were no ebooks. There were no PDFs. The only way people could study is if they had a copy of the Ogee with them, right? Now, think about this behavior. If you have a copy of the Ogee in front of you, you have a paper with you, and you end up kind of solving the questions, correct? Now, what happens when you do that is you are automatically focused because Ogee does not have any bright, shiny object to defocus you, correct? So I would be slightly old school. If you have a book with you and if you can practice from the book, I would say maybe that's one way in which you can overcome this. But please remember, I'm going to put a number over here, okay? 70% of people studying for the GMAT are not able to score well. They are not able to reach their desired goals, not because they don't have material. In fact, in 2020, the problem is the problem of plenty. What is the problem of plenty? The problem of plenty is there is just so much for you to study that we get overwhelmed with the amount of PDFs that we have, the amount of online courses that we have, that it can get little overwhelming, correct? One more thing is, I've heard a lot of students tell me this, that they can study from wherever. They sometimes study in front of their TV, in the dining table, in the bedroom. So the first thing is have a demarcated study zone if possible, okay? And when you are in this study zone, let us say you are with your friends, maybe you're sharing a room, or maybe you're right now with your parents, correct? Now, what happens is, other people who are occupying this house, it could be a sibling, it could be your brother, it could be your sister. See, the thing is, they don't know what is required for you to solve questions on the GMAT, right? Think about it. You are just focusing on a very dense passage in reading comprehension about social science, correct? And suddenly, in between, your sister walks in, correct? And even if your concentration breaks for like a quick 10 seconds, many of you must have realized that it's a lot harder for me to get back to what I was doing. Okay, this is what I call as the momentum, right? So when you study for the GMAT, what you're trying to do is you're generating momentum, correct? And what is the enemy of momentum? If you have studied physics, if you have studied this, you realize that there is an initial inertia, correct? So what happens is when we start studying, we don't know what material to use, we are getting this. Then finally, when we start solving, that is when we get into the momentum. If there is distraction, what is going to happen is that momentum breaks, correct? So be aware of that particular aspect. Find a no distraction zone. If you have a home office, excellent, nothing like it, correct? But I also want you to consider a backup study zone. I have had people come and tell me that, Arun, during the day, okay, I end up studying in a particular place, but the problem is I also have the TV. Now, just because I am studying for the GMAT, I can't tell everyone in the house that, hey, stop, watching TV, correct? I'll just give an example. Where I'm sitting right now is not my home office, correct? My home office is in another room. But it so happens that the other room, there are some distractions, that it's slightly noisy. So I actually, whenever I want to take sessions, I come. I have a setup. I have a small table. I'm able to put my laptop. I have an internet connection. So try to see if you can also figure out a backup zone of sorts. Uh, Now, one thing that I would like you to think of studying is you do not want to be busy. And I'll give you an analogy of what happens even when we are at work. How many of you feel that you're working the whole day, you're sending emails, you're participating in meetings, you're doing a lot of things, 8, 9, 10, 12 hours, you're doing something, but at the end of the day, we don't feel that we have made progress, correct? We have not moved the needle. If you have heard of that expression, like I didn't do anything subsequent. It is I'm reacting, to the day. Someone sent me an email, I spent the rest 30 minutes, figuring out a response to that email. Now, what may happen is on the GMAT, you may have something very similar. I have seen a lot of students who tend to study for the GMAT, right? Though they are spending 2 hours, they go through various threads on the GMAT Club, they solve Ogee questions, they read up material, they take up, online courses. But what really happens is they are not able to, kind of make, they are not able to move ahead, correct? So, first thing is you need to understand that you want to be productive, you don't want to be busy. So, when I say that you want to study for 2 hours, I'm saying let those 2 hours be super productive. Okay. One of the things that you can do, and the whole thing may not give us enough time, but in the course that I've shared with you earlier, so Abhijit, maybe you can give the link again. So in the course that I'm giving, this is actually a part of it's a module that we give to Trackable online students. I have actually explained this Pomodoro technique. So what happens in the Pomodoro technique is you have these 25-minute sessions. So scientifically, what has been proved is you can work with intense focus for about 25 minutes, correct? And post 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break. You do this for up to 5 such sessions, correct? So what it means is you are spending 25 minutes, 5-minute break, that is 30 minutes, another 25 minutes, 5-minute break, so that makes it an hour, correct? So you spend about 2 to 2.5 hours. By the way, the Pomodoro sessions are flexible. You can do 3 sessions, you can do 4 sessions, up to you. Ideally, if you do 4 sessions, you will be able to study for 2 hours. What it means, 25 hours of intense focus, 5-minute break, 25 minutes of intense focus, 5 minutes break, another 25 minutes. So you do that 4 times. There are apps available that you can install on your Chrome, you can install on your laptop, that basically gives you these timers, correct? And what you can do is in 25 minutes, let's take quant, correct? I would imagine that you should be able to solve about 12 questions in quant, right? And you should be able to solve approximately 15 questions in verbal, correct? So about 15 questions in verbal, about 12 questions in quant. So 25 minutes you spent solving, take a 5-minute break, step out, have a glass of water, come back. Now, what I want you to do is please do not directly look at the solution. Because if you're going to look at the solution, what will happen is you will not learn, the actual essence of that question. So what I would suggest is look up the answers. Let's take quant, right? So you solve 12 questions. Now what you do is just try to tally the answers on all these 12. Let us say that you got 9 of them right and 3 of them wrong. Okay. Now you know that you have made mistake in 3. What I want you to do is go back to the 9 questions, ask yourself, now that I know that my answer is the right answer, was my approach also the right approach? I want you to think about it. I may have gotten the right answer choice, but I may have gotten it by mistake. Maybe it was a fluke. correct? So what you want to make sure is you go back and you solve all the questions where you feel that you had a doubt. Typically, what are the kind of questions where you would want to revise? These are questions where you are between the last two answer choices. I'm pretty sure all of you have gone through that, right? You are between the last two answer choices and you end up picking the right one, not the wrong one, the right one. Even if you pick the right answer choice, that question confused you for a reason, correct? So I think it is wrong to focus only on questions that you have made a mistake on. It is important for us to focus on questions that we got right. But now that I'm going to look at it, here are a couple of questions I'm going to ask myself. A, was my approach correct? B, is there anything else? Let's say you do a sentence correction question. Is there anything else that I could have probably gotten solved any other way? Now, let's go to the three questions that you got wrong, correct? So these are three questions that you got wrong. Here is what I want you to do. Without looking at the solution, try to solve it again. Okay, what will happen is without time constraints, what it will do is it will also force you to think whether you have the competence to solve that question, correct? So maybe it is a fact that you did it in 2.5 minutes and because of that you weren't able to get it. But it may also happen that even if you don't keep the 2 minute into consideration, even if you give yourself 5 minutes, I'm pretty sure it has happened to you in some question in, let's say, RC or let's say a CR question, where no matter how much time you're giving yourself, you just are not able to get to the answer, correct? These are the questions that you should save. These are the questions that are going to give you the most learning, if you ask me, correct? So please make sure you go back to all the questions that completely stumped you, correct? That is how I'm measuring progress. For me, progress is not the number of hours I study, it is not the number of questions I solve. But progress for me is every study session, I have an objective. That today's study session, I have always found probability to be a very confusing topic. Here is what I'm going to do. In today's session, I'm going to spend 2 hours, but I'm going to make sure that I get probability out of the way. The first 25 minutes, I'm going to look up material on probability. So maybe you're part of, let's say, a course like Crackable. So in Crackable, we have an entire module explaining probability. So you do that. Then what happens? You get to questions. You go to Ogee or you go to any of the source where you're solving questions. Spend 10 to 12 minutes solving those questions. Then you spend another 25 minutes analyzing your answers. You get what I'm saying? By the end of 2 hours, you should get off your desk and say, you know what, I have kind of I've made clear progress. I know today probability is not that big a problem. And as I said at the start of the session, is think about it on the GMAT when you're studying, okay? When you're solving on the GMAT, let's say you're actually taking the GMAT, would it help for you to reflect on the question that you solved previously? Would it make sense for you to say, should I have picked C? Maybe I could have picked B. Maybe I could have picked D. No, it doesn't make sense because you've already done that question, correct? Would it make sense for you to think about the next question? Where am I? Am I doing well? What will be my final score? What kind of questions will I see next? How many questions in sentence correction is remaining? How many in CR? No, it is not going to help you. What is going to help you is investing 100% of your energy in being there, being present, solving that question, correct? Similarly, when you're studying, I want you not to get defocused. There are a lot of things happening around us, correct? And frankly, we may not have control over many of these things. Right now, for example, how many of you have at least a dozen tabs open in Chrome? Now ask yourself, when was the last time? Let's look at the first tab that is open. When did you open that tab? Maybe it was an interesting link that you clicked, when you were browsing, let's say, Facebook, correct? Now that link is there, you have to go and read that, but we never have time for it, correct? So what is happening is we end up cluttering our mind with a lot of things, Okay. Here is what I would suggest, when you're looking at GMAT. Remember, perfection. We are not aiming for perfection. We are aiming for progress. What is the difference? Let us say that you start running. Okay. What is the ideal distance for you to run? Maybe it is 2 kilometers. But if, let's say, one day you are not able to run 2 kilometers, would it be a failure? No, it is still a success. Even if you run 1 kilometer, it's a success. What then is a failure? A failure, according to me, is not wearing your shoes and not stepping out of the house. Correct? So, what if I were to tell you that progress for you is even if you wear your shoes, get down from your building, go down, declare victory, and come back? What if I were to say even that is okay? Similarly, on the GMAT, remember failure is when you don't solve a single question. Don't keep ideal goals. Many a times what happens, we keep these goals. Today I will study for 2 hours. Then what happens, the reason we don't end up studying is somehow we don't get those 2 hours. So in our mind, what has happened is we have pictured this ideal world when we will have those 2 hours. Because we don't have that ideal world, we never end up sitting down to study. So here is what I'm going to flip and tell you. When you sit to study, I want you to solve at least one question. If you're able to solve even one question, I would consider that study session to be a success. Now, you must ask, Arun, one question? Really? Well, let me go back to the example of running. What do you think is going to happen if you were to wear your shoes, go down to your, to the ground floor, correct? What do you think is going to happen? Okay, all the people who have taken membership for gym, correct, and never gone to a gym, ask yourself, what was the problem? Was the problem that you went to the gym wearing your shoes, wearing your shorts, and looked at the equipment, looked at the treadmill and say, I don't have the mood today? That is never going to happen. The problem is getting to the gym in the first place. Correct? Similarly, the problem is once you go down, you know what your brain is going to say? Your brain is going to say, come on, you're kidding me, right? You've worn your shoes, you've come down all the way. As well, we might take a, small walk. Correct? Similarly, when you sit down to study, what will happen is, even if you solve one question, your brain is going to say, come on, yaar, one question you have done, let's solve 2, 3 more questions. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, it's about building your momentum, correct? Building your GMAT momentum. And one of the ways in which we can be more disciplined, again, I'm kind of teaching you certain things by which we can trick our brain into doing certain things. These are all habit formation, correct? One of the ways in which we can do that is by having an accountability partner, correct? It is someone with whom you are sharing your plan. Someone, in some sense, so don't pick that person who's going to nag you. Because if you're going to pick a person who's going to nag you, you will end up avoiding that person. Don't do that. Okay. You want someone, you need to be accountable to, right? So that other person is going to come and say, hey, let's say you're preparing for the GMAT, and he comes and says, well, you said that you're going to be taking a GMAT Prep test this weekend. Are you going to be taking it? And you say, oh, I'm going to take it, but I have not studied. And that person should say, you know what? You told me that you were supposed that you're going to take a test. Now you're telling me you're not taking it. That means you're not going to keep your promise. Correct? So what happens is, in some sense, their duty, and you should tell them, okay, before you start, you should tell them that, hey, over this next 2, 3 months, you are going to come. I'm going to have a lot of things to tell you. I will tell you how tired I am. I will tell you how the world is against me. But I want you not to listen to me. Okay? I want you to hold me accountable. Correct? And that, according to me, is going to be a very important key in helping you prepare for your GMAT. And finally, the last thing is, GMAT is not a battle. See, one thing that I say is, if you love GMAT, GMAT will love you back. right? If you think about it, and this is something that I do, I teach verbal, correct? GMAT verbal. I have Arvind who teaches GMAT quant. So when I teach GMAT verbal, this is what I tell people, that essentially GMAT verbal is teaching you real world skills. It's teaching you real world skills. It is teaching you stuff that you need to know to perform better as a management professional. And I'll tell you why. Think about it. What is your post MBA goal? Many of you may say, I want to be an investment banker, I want to be a product manager, I want to be a consultant. Whatever your post MBA goal be, there are three critical traits that you need to have in order to succeed in the real life post your MBA. The first thing that you need to do is you need to know how to read. Correct? You need to know how to read. And when I say how to read, it is not how to read English. That you already know. Correct? If just 1 month, how much information you have been flooded about the coronavirus, be it WhatsApp, be it Facebook, be it any news that you're subscribing to. Your job is to basically distill all of that news and summarize it in a way that can be understood by someone. In other words, you're giving a gist of whatever you have read. If someone were to ask you a specific question, you should be able to go back to the source that you read it from. Isn't that what reading comprehension is all about? Now think about it. You have given me the gist. If you're an MBA, are you going to go to your boss and say, look, this is what I read about the COVID virus, this is the information, and just give him the summary? What is your boss going to expect you to do? He is going to expect you to do analysis. He is going to say, tell me, what are the assumptions over here? What are the conjectures we can draw? Whether this particular thing will impact my business positively or negatively. Correct? That is the kind of critical thinking that you need to develop on the GMAT. What is that? That is nothing but critical reasoning. Correct? And finally, when you are expected to present your thoughts to management, what are you expected to do? You are expected to put it in sentences that are clear, that are crisp, that conform to business writing. What is that? That is nothing but sentence correction. Right? See, if you enjoy this, if you think that I'm learning a real world skill that will help me beyond GMAT. In fact, I've had students who have gone on to become consultants come back to me and say, Arun, I've really enjoyed sentence correction. I had a student who went to work for BCG. She went to INSEAD and then she went to BCG and she said, my boss is a grammar Nazi. Correct? So as a consultant, you are expected to make sure every sentence is grammatically correct, right? So that is the last thought that I wanted to leave you with. Just a couple of things that I wanted to let you know before we end today's session. So Abhijit, if you can just share the link over here. So every weekend I take sessions as part of Crack Verbal. So we have live sessions, we have quant and verbal, we have a 3-month course. All you need to do is spend 4 hours with me on weekends. I will teach you exactly what you need to know as far as GMAT is concerned, be it sentence correction, critical reasoning, reading comprehension. In quant, we cover arithmetic, algebra, geometry, all of it. The coming weekend, I'm going to be teaching critical reasoning. In case you are interested to see how I teach, in case you are interested to know what critical reasoning really tests you on, please feel free to join me on this session. We are going to spend about 4 hours. I guarantee that in these 4 hours, the way you look at critical reasoning will change. All right? So this is our email address. In case you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at enquiry@trackable.com. Abhijit will be posting the link. And that's all I had. I wanted to keep the last 10 minutes. We are at about 8:20. I wanted to keep the last 10 minutes for Q&A. So Abhijit or anybody, I'm not able to see the chat window. So I'm not sure if I can see a message at 7:31 saying that we are live. But apart from that, if there are any questions, I would be able to, I'd be glad to take that. Okay. So You can post it publicly. Are you able to post your questions? Can you post your questions?
Arun, you can just can you stop? Can you stop your screen share? Arun, you hear me? Arun, can you hear me?
So I'll just wait for something. So I think just give me. I know there is a lag right now. Just a quick. So I'm just waiting for the questions to start appearing so that I can answer.
Arun, do you hear me? Hello.
Just give me a second, please. I'm still trying to figure out. All right. I'm sorry. I just able to see your chat now. So let me just go through it. I'm really sorry. Um, okay. Cool. Can I just go through the questions now?
Yep, you can.
Okay, so someone has asked me about, so I'm able to see the chat window. So how do I stay inspired and motivated in these tough times? So one thing that I would like to tell you is two things, in fact. The first thing is ask yourself, why are you doing this? See, if you are going to be telling yourself that your only motivation is to study for the GMAT, trust me, 1 week you will forget about GMAT. Okay, 2 weeks you will just forget. Your motivation has to be bigger. Your motivation has to be your career. Your motivation has to be something a lot larger than that. Correct. So that is the first thing that I would suggest. Correct. So make sure that you are kind of looking at the bigger thing. A lot of students ask me, Arun, should I be taking the GMAT now or should I maybe wait for some time and see how it works out? Now, here is a slight problem with that technique. That what happens, let's say that in the industry that you are in, okay, by let's say October, you get to know that maybe the industry is not really favorable. Maybe I should be, doing the GMAT or applying to a B school. October may become too late. I'll tell you why. You start your prep in October, then before you realize it becomes, January, and you miss all your deadlines. The way I would see it is if you start preparing for it in April, you take the test by July, right? Let us say you have a GMAT score with you. This is the way I look at a GMAT score. A GMAT score could serve as an insurance policy. What is an insurance policy? It's like, well, in the event you do well on the GMAT, you have a choice with you not to apply. Correct? At the end of the day, it's a $250 cost or a $200 cost, right? But what is more important is you have something as plan B, correct? So that's what I would consider and kind of this. Um, start with a bigger why, correct? That's my this thing. There is another question which said, should I be studying for, like someone said about studying for 4 hours or 2 hours, and 2 hours is very less. I want you to go back to the time that you are studying in college, correct? What happened when you are studying in college? Let's say you had a submission. you had a journal that you had to do the previous day. What would have happened is you probably stretched for 6 hours, 8 hours, and you ended up completing and making that submission. Or you might have studied for 4-6 hours the night before, and you might have ended up taking the test. Now, that part of the brain that is used is the part that requires you to recollect information. That is the part that is retrieving information. Think about the IAS exam. In the IAS exam, what do you need in order to succeed? You need knowledge. You need to remember things. If you are studying for the IAS exam, I would suggest please study for 12 to 14 hours a day. But GMAT is a completely different ballgame, right? This is requiring a lot of focus. It requires a lot of attention. So my take would be, if at all I want to stretch it, I would probably pick 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, if you don't have a very tough day in front of you. Okay, so that would be my advice. The study material that I advise people is please stick to official material as much as possible. That is the Ogee, the verbal review, and the quant review. Apart from that, MBA.com also has what they call as the official GMAT pack, GMAT questions. If you take all of these questions, you literally have close to 1,500, 2,000 questions. Plus, you can go to GMAT Club, and there are threads where you have retired GMAT exam questions. All of these put together, you probably have around 3,000, 3,500 questions. And here is my take. If 3,000, 3,500 questions cannot save you, 35,000 questions also cannot save you. Correct? So it's very important that we study from a finite source, we know what to do, and apply it properly. I had a question from Jake Winters. It says, okay, so you're asking questions about the admission, right? So Jake, one thing that I want you to remember is GMAT is not a test of memory. If I were to give you a sentence correction, the amount of theory that is required for you to know, right, that you're required to know to do very well on the GMAT is actually very finite. Correct? So what I would do is I would probably pick a bunch of questions and I would just make sure that I'm solving 5-10 questions every day just to keep my momentum. I'll say this again, a lot of it will depend on whether you're able to maintain your momentum. Okay. One more question I had was, what do I think about the admission deadlines being pushed for 2020? Will it be pushed? The answer is yes. Okay. Here is my prediction. You are going to have multiple rounds this time. You are going to have an early action round. You're going to have a round somewhere in September. I think you are going to have an interim round somewhere in November. And you also are going to have a round around January. So what I feel is B schools are going to break it into smaller intervals. That's what I think is going to happen as far as admission deadlines are concerned. Correct? Okay, I'll just try to answer the questions that I can possibly answer. Okay, here is the way I look at it, the current pandemic. The best time to do an MBA is when the market, your job market, is tight. Okay, if the market is going through a recession, the best time to do an MBA would be, then. Because what you really do is you end up riding out the worst times of the economy. Think about it. If you were to apply to a B school in 2020, you're going to get admission in 2021, right? And when you join a B school in 2021, we don't know whether we're going to get a vaccine or how the world is going to look like, but you are going to graduate in 2023. And I can tell for a fact that this whole pandemic thing we would have found a solution by 2023. So what happens? The pent-up demand, the economy, that comes back. And along with that, You come out and guess what? You got the credentials, you got an MBA on your resume. So not only have you ridden out the bad market, you also are coming back better prepared. You are reskilling yourself, being more relevant to the job market. That's what I would say. This I am very skeptical about the GMAT online test just because of the online feature. So my suggestion would be try it out, but that's what I would do. Vaibhav, how do I remember what we did while solving 3,000 questions? Two parts to it. One part to it is you need to be having some kind of a journaling mechanism. What is a journaling mechanism? It is a notebook or a pad that you have and you're making references, correct? You're writing whatever you're learning. Writing, according to me, is one of the best ways for your brain to kind of latch on to something that you have done, okay? Having said that, I would still say what I said earlier, which is GMAT is not a test of memory. If you are looking at GMAT as a test of memory, it's the wrong way to approach the test, correct? I would say the best time to do, and this is not related to the, I'm just trying to look at all the questions that are related to, the topic that we are conversing. So let me just see. If not, I'll come back to questions which are on other topics. Okay, so that's a great question. How do I take tests? There is a Vanessa Williams song which says, save the best for the last. Don't do that as far as tests are concerned. Okay. What you need to do is use tests as a good way to build your momentum. I would there are 6 tests available on MBA.com. There are 2 tests that are free. There are 4 tests that are paid. At Crack Verbal, we have 5 tests that we give our students. Whatever your source be, once you got a bunch of tests, what you do, take the first test before you start preparing. Okay? Why? Don't worry about the score. Whether you score a 300 or 400 or 500 on that diagnostic test, please do not worry about it. Remember, it's a diagnostic test. The test is not telling you anything. You are learning about the test. You are learning what it takes to actually succeed on the test, because a lot of times when we solve questions in isolation, when we solve questions from the official guide, verbal review, we don't know how we would react when we were to see all the 31 questions in quant and the 36 questions in verbal. What happens if the questions come one after the other? So it's important for you to understand those subtle nuances of the test, correct? Now coming to the second part, which is you take a test to begin, one test at the end of the first month, and then intervals of approximately 15 days. Okay. As you get into your third month, you can reduce this interval to about a week. Okay. But in no case should you be taking a test every day. That's another thing that I've noticed from a lot of students. They just take a lot of tests. I'm going to give you something that should be food for thought. I want you to think about it. Tests are a tool for assessing where you are. They are not a tool for improvement. I'm going to say this again. Tests are a way to assess. Think of it as a thermometer. If you are not well, if you're going to measure yourself 10 times a day using a thermometer, it is still going to tell that you're sick. Similarly, if you're scoring 650, if you take the same or similar test 5-6 times, hoping that magically one day you start scoring 750, it is not going to happen, right? You need to come back. You need to go back to your net practice. You need to be going back, solving questions, working on your weakness, and then hitting the tests, correct? By the way, Abhijit, if you can also post for the weekend session. So this weekend, I'm going to be having a session as I shared with you earlier. So feel free to join me on that session. Harsh asked this question: do people score 740 in the first attempt? I will give you an interesting, example of someone that I know. So he had graduated from BITS Pilani, which is in India. He had just graduated, fresh graduate, and he took a diagnostic GMAT score. In his GMAT diagnostic score, he had a 760. Okay. He studied for two weeks. He took only official questions. He solved only the last 100, 200 questions from Ogee. His eventual score was a 780. Now, my point is, let us not worry about such people. You will always have people who will, hit the ball out of the ballpark. Correct? What we need to worry is, where are we? Correct? Are there people who scored 740 in the first attempt? Yes. Correct? But don't worry about them. Where you come from is not as important as where you are going. So let me give you an example, and this is something that I usually tell my students. If there are two students, and let's say both of them solve 100 questions, one of them gets 60 questions right, the second one gets 40 questions right. But the first one does not do anything. Okay, he just goes back and does nothing. But the second guy, the guy who got 40 questions right, he goes back. Not only does he analyze the questions that he got right, but he also analyzes the questions that he got wrong. Okay, he spends a lot of time reviewing those 100 questions. Now, both of them take the. Who do you think I should place my bet on? Should I place the bet on the guy who scored 60% or a guy who scored 40%? Well, no prizes for guessing. I would place my bet on the second guy. Correct? So that's what I want you to remember, that, don't worry where you are. As long as you're learning, as long as you're making progress, GMAT will be your friend. Okay. Samarth had a great question. What do I do if I take GMAT Prep test? There are a lot of repeated questions. Here is what I would suggest. Try to score 800. Okay. Try to score 800. And here's the funny part. You think it is easy? It is not easy. Correct? That means you need to get all the questions right. Okay. You need to get a 51 in quant and you need to get a 51 in verbal. Right? Invariably, what happens is you will end up tripping at some question. You'll fall at some question. That is the question that you need to go back and relook. Correct? And according to me, well, don't worry. I've had students who have scored 720, 730 on the GMAT Prep test with repeats, and they actually ended up with a 760 on the real GMAT. Correct? So I've got students like that. So don't worry on that. How do I assess my diagnostic test? Again, diagnostic test is giving you a score. Don't worry too much about that score. I have had students, and you can, there's one of my students, Nikhil Nair. Nikhil Nair went to Oxford. Just to give you a background, Nikhil Nair got a Skoll Fellowship. Skoll Fellowship gave him a complete right. He got 100% scholarship. You can Google for him. He went to Oxford side, Nikhil Nair. And, he scored a 690 on the GMAT. Okay. He got the scholarship and he got the admission with 690. But here is the interesting thing. His first diagnostic test, he scored a 350. Correct? Just imagine how demotivated he must have felt. Right? If he had told himself that I got a 350 and there is no point, he would have probably given up on the journey. But the thing is, you need to persevere. Maybe 3 months, maybe 4 months, maybe a little more, but doesn't matter. You will be able to, Okay. I didn't actually answer this question of 2 weeks. So Abhijit, let me know if I'm okay. In the time part, we are about 10 minutes overboard, but I'm just trying to see if I can help answer some questions over here. So Vinay asked this question, which is, what if I have only 2 weeks? Okay. Now, GMAT preparation can broadly be, split into 2 parts. Yeah. One of the things that I also want to let you know is please subscribe also to the GMAT Club YouTube channel. You also get access to all the GMAT Club tests free for 7 days. So please go ahead and click on the link. Now, the question is, I have 2 weeks. Yeah. So the question is, I have 2 weeks. What do I do? Remember that your GMAT journey will have 2 parts to it. The first part is what I call as improvement phase. And the second part is what I call as the optimization phase. What happens in the improvement phase is you start by knowing or learning about something. For example, you did not know what parallelism meant in sentence correction. Now you learn about parallelism, you go back and you are able to apply it, you will see that your scores will go up. In fact, many of you who have been starting your prep, you will realize that initially your scores may even increase by 100, 150 points. But what happens is the scenario that Vinay is mentioning over here is you end up in a scenario where you are already reached a kind of a plateau. You have already reached a 650 kind of score and somehow you are not able to break it. Improvement, so the journey, what took you from 500 to 650 is not going to take you from 650 to 750. You have to understand that the rules of the game would change, correct? Which means now it is no longer a question of improvement, it is a question of optimization. You need to go back and you need to start working on things like, am I guessing better? Am I conserving my mental energy? And many a times, if you're stuck at a 650, it could also mean that the underlying technique that you're using has a flaw. And what I mean by that is, think of let's say, using technique. Using a flawed technique is like running in the wrong direction. Okay, solving more questions will make you run faster and faster, but in the wrong direction, right? That's the key for you to understand. So I would not just mindlessly solve questions. I would stop, take a step back, relook at what I'm doing, and see if I have a better way of doing things. Correct? Uh, how much time should you spend analyzing? My thumb rule is at least as much time you spend solving it. Okay, so between 1x to 2x, correct? So if you have probably spent 20 minutes solving 10 questions, I would imagine that you would need anywhere between 20 to 40 minutes to analyze your mistakes. Okay, so I guess I tried to answer your questions. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found this session to be useful. Please go ahead and let me know. I'm on GMAT Club. My ID is Arun at Crackable. You can follow me on GMAT Club. If there is any question regarding prep that I can help answer, I would be more than glad to do so. All right. Thanks a lot and happy preparation.